Welcome to this episode of Athletes as Educators. I'm your host, Angie Lewis. On the podcast today, we have Dr. Damien Hodge. Damien played basketball at East Tennessee State University. At Tennessee State University, he went on to get a master's in sports management and a doctorate in education. Is a mentoring specialist, works in educational administration at Tennessee State, and works for FTH International Educational Services. Damien, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, will you talk a little bit about why basketball has such an impact on your life?
Well, growing up where I grew up, there was nothing to do but, sort of play sports. And I sort of gravitated towards basketball at the age of 7. And I actually was a better football player. But I just loved basketball so much that I decided that, and I was so small, and I was just afraid of getting hit. I just hated to get hit. So I remember at an early age that basketball was probably going to be my sport of choice. So it turned out to be pretty okay.
Now, a lot of players are going through this college recruiting process, and a lot of people start, like you said, when they're really young, and a lot of kids have aspirations to go in and play college ball. What was that recruiting process like for you, and what advice do you have for young athletes who are now going through it?
Right. That recruiting process I thought it was one of the highlights of my life at the time. I went from not getting a phone call to being in the top 20 at an all-star camp in Georgia. I was in the top 20, and by the time I got home, the phone was ringing off the hook. And I just thought it was cool. My best friend and I would come home every day after school and just open up all my mail from different colleges. And it was fun. It got hectic at the end a little. It sort of got, it got old a little, but it was so great and so awesome to be wanted. But I would tell young athletes today to just take it all in stride. It only happened once. It's only going to happen once for you, typically, unless you can make it, to the next level. But it can be a great process. Make sure you weigh all your options. There's so many more options today than there were, 20 years ago, that you can sort of navigate a little bit better. Players and parents are a little smarter than they were back then. All we wanted to do was go to college, so we didn't really care, what the underlining, thing was. So I would say to stay focused on definitely school, but enjoy the process, because and just go on that great ride. Go on all your recruiting visits, because they're free. They're flying you in, and they're taking good care of you. So take advantage of all of those and find your fit. Not only are they trying to figure out if you're a good basketball player and a good fit, socially, you got to figure out if they're a good fit for you as well, and that's important.
That is super important. You mentioned something that was rather nostalgic about coming home and opening all the letters. I played college ball. I did the same thing. Do you still have any of your letters?
I do. It's so funny. I do. I have. It was one that stood out more so than the rest of them. When East Tennessee was recruiting me, I had already had letters from Cincinnati, Florida State, and some up Georgia and some other schools. And I remember the University of Cincinnati, Bob Huggins sent me a letter, and it was personal. So that's when it's kind of serious when they actually put the ink, themselves on the card. And he talked about how great I was and how I could help them go to the Final Four. And then he sort of just tapered off after that. But East Tennessee, what drew me to them is the very first phone call. I'll never forget it. The guy said, and his name is Jeff Lebo, and I don't know if you remember Jeff Lebo. He played at North Carolina, and it was his first. He was assistant coach at East Tennessee. It was his first job. So I was actually Jeff Lebo's very first recruit.
Oh, okay.
And I remember him saying, is it okay if I continue to call you? And nobody else had said that. And what made me sign with East Tennessee State is I had a low ACT score, but I was okay, academic wise, GPA wise. And nobody would sign me early but East Tennessee State. Everybody else wanted to wait to see if I was going to pass that test. And I remember East Tennessee called me and said, your scholarship papers will be in the mail on the early signing period. We'd love to have you. We think we know for a fact that you're going to make it. And that spoke volumes to me. That said, we got faith in you. We know that you can do it. We definitely know what you can do on the basketball court, but we think you're smart enough to do it as well. So it was a no-brainer for me, and they flew me in on a visit, and it was just fantastic. They treated me very, very well. I'm still in contact with most of those guys that played before, that was there before me, and some that came after. It's a great family, and even though I transferred, I'm still connected and a part of that family. So that's wonderful.
It is great to know that they believed in you in spite of not having a great ACT score. But there are a number of students, depending on the preparation, you may not score really high on the ACT, but there's still an opportunity to play at that next level. You mentioned
Absolutely.
that you transferred. Why did you transfer? I know we talked about it a little bit before, but why did you transfer? And what was the process like of sitting out? How did you deal with that?
When I transferred, I transferred because I didn't make all the right choices that I needed to make, and it was a maturity level that I just wasn't there, and my choices didn't add up to wasn't conducive to being a part of that team, and I was frustrated. They were frustrated with me. And we both sort of mutually decided that it was best for me to transfer. Um, and so I just came back home to Middle Tennessee, to Middle Tennessee, and it's funny. When I got home, MTSU called me and was like, we want to talk to you, that sort of thing. And so I went in and spoke with them, and they wanted me to go to a community college, junior college at the time, and I just felt like my skills were way beyond, junior college, and some of those guys. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to step down.
Yeah.
So I sat out at Tennessee State and ended up, with a scholarship there that next year.
So what was the process like of sitting out? How did you deal with that? Because as a baller, like how.
I played every day. There were some pros that I played with a lot of pros in the summertime at the YMCA, and there were so many leagues, at the time, and it was some great competition, and I was known as one of the hoopers around here, that could, so I stayed busy, doing it. Was tough because you see your team, playing on TV and that sort of thing, and it was tough, and I had already had a taste of being in the NCAA tournament and winning, a game in the tournament. I was on that 1992 East Tennessee State team that beat Arizona in the first round of the NCAA tournament and lost to the Fab Five in the second round. That Michigan team with those fabulous five freshmen. So so my experiences had sort of taken me here, way up here, and I just didn't want to. I wanted to stay at that level and to be able to play. But it was a tough transition, but it was good in a lot of ways as well because I kept playing, and I played all the time with people who were pros, people who had played overseas, ex-college ball players, just it was great competition. To get out there with those guys. So I stayed in shape, but it was tough.
What was the most challenging part, in addition to seeing your team on TV or watching them play? What were some other challenges with being in that space of not playing for that? And I ask this because a lot of players are transferring, one, but don't think they fully understand what that experience is like, having to sit out. So can you shed even more light on that?
I think first, I think people sort of look at you as not being coachable
Yep.
when you transfer. It's like, they're in whatever tag you have there, that tag is certainly going to follow you, wherever you go. So I think that in transferring and in keeping your dignity, you have to sort of do it quietly.
Okay.
Because if you don't, it can really hinder you, you know, going forward. And even if you're good enough to play at the next level, that tag still follows you. And if it's negative, it could cost you money,
Yep.
down the line. We see it every day with people, projected as a top five, but because they acted a fool, 4 years ago,
Yep.
they're they dropped all the way down to the 20,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Um, it's a tough transition, but I think focus puts it in perspective, and just being able to do it as quietly as you can, and that's sort of what I did. I was sort of and there was not you know my coaches. I remember my head coach's wife was just crazy about me.
Mm-hmm.
She just loved me. And he did as well. My coaches were great coaches and they treated me well. It just wasn't a good fit at the moment because I wasn't in a good place.
Yeah.
Um, I think mentally. So there's a lot of challenges in playing athletics. It's you got a different set of challenges, in high school. In high school, I'm the superstar, so it's my team. I'm the superstar for you know 3 years.
Yeah.
So you get to college, everybody's just as good as you. So it's a tough transition. So you gotta step your game up. And then if you're ever fortunate to go to the next level, that's on the whole. I wasn't fortunate enough to do that, but I think I could have. Everybody just don't get to that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Very few people play at that level. But there are a
right,
lot of really good players who don't make it to that level for various reasons. And that's cool too.
right,
I think part of the importance of this podcast is for young athletes who are listening, for them to know that you can have a very successful, happy, fulfilling life and not
yes,
be in the NBA and
absolutely,
still play college ball and still be extremely well educated and do things that matter in this world beyond playing sports. And clearly
absolutely,
you've done